I think there are 700 to 750 of these recordings on Facebook and YouTube. I think that's amazing. So I never go to those places, but 750 of my talks are there. It's kind of wonderful. Does anyone have a question?
Stuart, I have a question, Bob Sink.
Yes, Bob.
Can you explain how to best deal with a negative emotion, maybe shame or guilt or whatever, a strong emotion that can hamper our inner growth? How best to deal with that straight on?
Those kind of emotions come up in everybody. And, the way I've learned to deal with that, Bob and everyone else, is if I ever get a tinge of emotion like that, or, a taste of depression, or I've said it a lot, I'll say it again. What I do with it is I bring it down, that energy, into the chakra right below the navel. And I use my will, I use my mind, to do that. And when you do this enough, that kind of emotion begins to listen to you. It won't take over. You've developed a power in yourself that can transform that emotion into chi, into harmony, into balance. But it takes practice. It's like training, it's like Pavlovian dogs. I'm sure you know what those things are. You got to train them again and again and again until they finally listen, until that, that shame, that anger, that depression, that all those nuances of negativity, they begin to listen to you. And by listening to you, that you can draw them into the chakra below the navel. And it's like alchemical, what's killing you begins to give you life. I mean, look, what you described is something that's buried inside every human being. And I don't think there's anyone alive that doesn't have to deal with that in one way or another. It's conjuring up the past, You did something that you're ashamed of in the past. It's buried somewhere in some remote part of yourself. And opening inside will bring that to the surface and give you an opportunity to free yourself of it forever by drawing it into the chakra below the navel, transforming it into chi, using your will, your mind, your breath to do that. It's fantastic, You basically save your own life. And it's one of the keys to mastering what Rudy had to teach and what I have to teach. Because, as I've said 150,000 times, the one person we're up against is ourselves. And if we learn to master our interior lives by transforming anger, shame, guilt, fear, insecurity into chi, it gives us the power to develop the chakra system, to refine the chakra system, to build a strong inner life by building that strong inner life, we open to a permanent connection with higher energy in the universe, which is nurturing us. We receive it. We're open enough inside to receive it, and all these impediments don't get in the way. We just kind of wash them down the drain, flush them down the toilet. And I think this is kind of an amazing thing to learn. I don't think anybody in the world teaches anything like this. And I never ran into it until I met Rudy. And listening to him and learning this, it basically saved my life. And it also keeps one from spending all their time, focused on something that doesn't exist anymore. And that's the past. We spend so much of our lives like a ping pong match, going from the past to the future, the past to the future. Past is guilt and shame and anger, and the future is insecurity and fear and what's going to become of me, all that kind of stuff. And that's what makes up a person's life. How can they ever build anything of a spiritual nature if they're not focused on the present? So people hide out in themselves. They really do, they just bury themselves in all of that guilt and shame and the mistakes they made in the past that kind of run through them and make them scream a little, squirm a little bit. All of that goes away if we just get focused. And we build the strength in the present, to be able to step by step build our inner life. And when you build your inner life, the external world will follow in its wake. We're no longer afraid of money, of success, of all these things that people just are totally paranoid about and frightened of. And we stop being afraid of all these things if we're focused and we develop the chakra below the navel and transform the future and the past into the present. I hope that's clear because it took me a long time to master this. But when it finally came around, it was, oh my God, my whole life changed. First thing that happened, I was able to live with myself. I was able to laugh and have fun and enjoy life. But this is at the core of what Rudy taught, at the core of what I teach. Because nobody's going to have a spiritual life until they learn how to become a human being. I don't care what ashrams they go to. I don't care what robes and costumes and incense they burn. It's all bullshit. Vegetarian or this, that, whatever. They have to learn to become human. And nobody is going to learn to become human until they completely focus their consciousness in the present, in the now. Does anyone else have I hope what I'm talking about is clear. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart, could you also explain what that means to you to be a human being? What does that mean to you?
What it means to me is I can get up in the morning and enjoy my day, but I can be happy even when things are going. I mean, my cleaning lady came this morning, and they come every 2 weeks to clean the apartment here. They're very nice people, and she came in and she wanted to talk to me. And this has never happened before. And then she told me this story. It was really a horrible story that happened to her, not to her, but to her sister-in-law and brother. And, and if I wasn't centered inside, I would have gotten swept away in the drama and the emotions. Instead, I was capable of just opening in my heart and sharing with her a very deep compassion for what happened. Totally unexpected. My cleaning lady's coming today, they're going to clean the apartment. It's great. And all of a sudden, she's talking about this stuff. And it was really pretty terrible stuff she was talking about. Tears in her eyes. Now, if I didn't have this training that I have, I couldn't have reached her inside and, bring a little sparkle of joy and love and compassion to her and her situation. I mean, it's learning to be human. It's learning to live with your heart open. I mean, I always say happy people are enlightened people. It's really true. How many times have I said that? 150 million? I mean, happy people are enlightened people, not people that can read the Bhagavad Gita and chant 50 billion mantras and the 100 billion names of God and all this stuff, Happy people. I mean, if you can do all that stuff with your heart open, then yeah, you're an enlightened person. You do all of that stuff by rote. I remember, I'll never forget this as long as I live. I was in India, and in the foothills of the Himal, found a Tibetan monastery, and they were having prayer services. They have they sit in rows, cross-legged on the floor in rows, and they're reading from sutra books. I couldn't understand. It was all in Tibetan, Sanskrit, whatever it was. And I'm sitting there trying to tune into this, and I couldn't, and I was falling asleep, for God's sake. And there were two kids there. I'll never forget these kids as long as they're throwing spitballs at each other. And giggling and having fun. And I found more God in those kids than in the rote of chanting all that. I mean, it just opened me up to see these two kids behaving like kids in this monastery. I'll never forget that. And then the Lama came by with a stick in his hand and whacked them both over the head. And when he turned his back, they started throwing spitballs at each other again. Kids being kids, having fun. And I think a lot of that's missing in the spiritual world. Sheer having fun, laughing, happiness. Not so much ritual and dogma and stuff like that. I mean, that's what took me a long time to discover this kind of stuff. But I finally realized it's the child in us that is really connected to God. That part of us, that improvises with life, that's open to experience, that allows the unexpected to happen, that can laugh at things. Happy people are enlightened people. But find a happy person. Easier to find the Holy Grail than a person that can sustain joy an entire day, love an entire day. And all of Rudy's meditation practice evolves around this. I mean, I remember when he had to surrender everything to Muktananda, everything. You know, his celibacy and his vegetarian, all this stuff. We were under a whole new ashram there, you know, with all this Hindu, you know, dogma stuff that we had to follow because Muktananda made those demands. And I remember Rudy said to me, the only thing that he will never take away from me is the joy in my heart, the love of God. Everything else, they even offered him his business, Rudy. Said, Baba, you want my business? Told him I was there. I heard him say, I mean, it was amazing. He had this hugely successful business. He said, Baba, it's yours if you want it. Just keep me connected with God. That's all I'm asking. Rudy was a kick. I remember he became a celibate, and that was just really a scream. And I was working in one of his buildings on 10th Street, helping this photographer renovate the the space to make a studio there. And I looked like a freaking coal miner, you know. I had dust and dirt all over me, and from scraping beams. And he came down and he looked at me with a big smile on his face. He said, Stuart, you know, I can be celibate, but it doesn't mean I can't give somebody else an orgasm. You know, I mean, it's fantastic how he saw life, you know. He saw life and all. I mean, I said, only from you, Rudy. I laughed so hard. And then he said, come, I want to introduce you to Carl Collins. He's inviting everyone to Dallas. He's going to pay the bill, Muktananda and a whole bunch of people and myself, and I want you to come. I said, Rudy, look at me. I can't. He said, Stuart, if he doesn't see who you are this way, fuck him. He said, so I went into his store and introduces me to. I couldn't even shake the guy's hand. You know, I was covered with dirt. And this is one of my best teachers. And I wanted to come to Dallas and Carl. Okay, he's invited to come. Just let me have his name. I'll get him a ticket. I mean, it was Rudy. He was so fantastic, you know. He had such a sense of humor about everything. I remember he was fasting, Rudy. And we were driving up to Big Indian, and the car broke down in front of a pizza parlor. And he looked out the window and he said, it must be God's will. And he went into the pizza parlor and broke his fast, getting a slice of pizza. I mean, it was to be around him was amazing. It was just simply amazing because you had to surrender everything. You can't have an opinion about anything. You had to just totally surrender. First of all, to the absurdity of life, and secondly, to a spiritual life. Being a child of God, living in this world that we live in. That's what I mean about it, Bob. Being human, not being so structured and dogmatic and, you know. And I can't tell you how many meditations I did sitting with Rudy while he was watching the Dick Van Dyke Show. It was his favorite television program. And every day he would come in, sit on his chair, turn on that program, and I'd be sitting there doing meditation with him, getting Shakti and energy. And he'd be chuckling at all these jokes they were telling on. I mean, it was unbelievable, you know? Unbelievable. And it taught me to let go. It taught me that initially it was very hard. It took years to really learn how to just, but eventually the lesson found a home in me. Does anyone else have a question? And I loved them for that. I just said, where am I going to find a teacher like this? Who does spiritual work and has an open heart, and he can find the absurdity in any. Remember, we were driving through Dallas. We had a place there called the World of Animals. And Muktananda said to everybody, well, you shouldn't eat cows because cows don't eat meat. That was one of his reasonings. So we're driving through the World of Animals, and a couple of lions walk in front of us. And we taps Muktananda on, Baba, I'm going to have a lion steak tonight. I mean, lions eat meat. I'm going to have a lion steak tonight. It was like finding the absurdity in life, in everything, and all these so sacred teachings that ultimately, one has to be able to laugh at as well. To be human about the way one lives, not so structured and dogmatic, and to be able to laugh at life. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, then there'll be meditation on Sunday. There won't be a class on Monday. I have to go have my, every month, 2 months, I have this treatment in the retina. And there will be a class next Wednesday. So thank you. God bless you all. I hope this evening you can spend with tongue in cheek. God bless you all. I'll see everybody on Sunday.
Good night, Stuart.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.